Does she do an intro or something? Should she do an intro or something?
I think he's gonna, are you gonna do an intro?
You just have all the information on your slips. So. I am Ice Age Trail 1,000-miler. The trail is actually 1,096 miles. And it is actually follows the landforms of the receding ice of the last glacier 10,000 years ago. And Wisconsin is a state that actually showcases the glacial features the best of any other area. We have here is the trail. Starts at Interstate Park at St. Croix Falls, goes across to Anigo and back down. In our area here, you get Hartman Creek and Iola, then down to Janesville, and back up the Kettle Moraine to the Sturgeon Bay at Potawatomi State Park. And the Ice Age Trail Alliance is a state organization that oversees 21 county chapters of the Ice Age Trail. And they put out a book, and the book will be over there to look at. And this is a book that's every square on that map is a book, the map in this book. And I said that, and then there's if there's bold lines, that's indicating that it's in the woods, and if there's hyphenated, that is the road miles, because all of the trail is not completed. And they also put out a guidebook, and this gives you more detailed information about the hike itself, and where the parking areas are, and information about the area that you may be in. Now what we did, we took a copy of the atlas, a copy of the companion guide, put the clips on, and that was our hiking Bibles. And the newest for the new fad people, there is a data book over there. They have now came out with a data book that has more of the technology stuff in it, the waypoints and that type, and it's more detailed than the companion yet. And there also is a little information on there. They have come out with the phone apps. But now Mary says she finds that sometimes that
Doesn't always work. It doesn't always work because you might not have cell phone reception.
And the Alliance also puts out the mobile skills, that they got a mobile skills crew. There's one poster over there regarding pictures of that. And what they do is all volunteers that will go out and build trail for anywhere from 3 to 5 days. And they camp out and work on these trails, building the new trails. And I said, in fact, they're leaving today. Just today, they're starting in Manitowoc County on a project. Yeah, so there'll probably be 100, 120 people at least throughout the 5 days. And they just finished a section in Ringo just a week or two ago. I was up there for one day of that. And this is the one east of Eau Claire Dells, the Plover River segment. And this is a 1/4 mile boardwalk. It took them like 3 years to finish that 5.9 segment. And this is on one of the posters too. This was featured on the Fleet Farm calendar in 2014. It was pretty cool. Now, some people go through and do a through hike where they start from one terminus and go to the other. I actually did it in segments. And the nice part about the segment hiking is that you see the trail in all seasons. My first section that I logged was in Lincoln County at Grandfather Falls. This dam represents the living history of taming the waters for hydroelectric power in the early 20th century. This is the original Red Brook building, and these are pen stocks. Those are pipe-like tubes that are made of wood banded with steel, and they carry water from a man-made reservoir. Each one of them is a 1/4 mile long. One is 13 feet in diameter, the other one is 11. And there you go. And this right now, that's what this is. Here's the little, you can see a little bit of water there. in the winter through these knot holes, this water would come out and it would freeze. Made such an awesome thing. That they were actually made originally in 1938 of redwood, and they were replaced in 1975 with yellow pine. But now this thing with the ice you are not going to see anymore, because right now they are being taken down and are being replaced with metal. But they are saying, I've been told that they are going to take one of those penstocks and possibly put it over next to the trail for history's sake. This section we're at in Marquette County down by Portage, and this trail actually went across 21 numbered footbridges. And it crosses inlets and outlets of the Fox River. But as I started getting my presentation ready, this trail is closed right now. They had a landowner problem at the end of the one section of it, so we're hoping that that's going to reopen at some point. Here we're at in Lincoln County. This is my twin sister. We were hiking. We had put the car on one end, and a couple gals came out from Madison, and they said, well, do you have garbage bags? And I said, no. And they start ripping them off the road, and each one of us four, we said, well, we have a car on one on the other end. I said, we will, no, we're only going one way. Oh, you might need them, they said. So we started walking, and here we followed the trail, took off the bags, probably went 25 yards down. The trail made a right angle. You had to cross the creek again. This is information that we would have from our companion guide. If we had been diligent at that time, we would have known that. In the fall of 2007, I met Diane Gens from the town of Rome. She had been hiking with her partner since 1999, and she became ill and was not able to continue. And Diane and I felt this is such a blessing that we met. I said, we thank the Lord that we are able to walk in nature and enjoy His creation. And we started our hikes with prayer. Am I too far over? This was one of the hikes there. This is actually at the Coloma Wayside. And this trail is a cement thing that goes under the culvert under Interstate Highway 39. And that's a very access route to be able to get to and take a hike on, because you just go by the wayside and it's yellow blaze from there. On one of our first hikes, we usually follow the yellow blazes, but they will have like a white blaze that might be an offshoot, and it said it would go out to this kettle. Well, we walked out to there, and here were the beautiful shades of green. This picture really makes it nice. And the kettle is, when I tell you these descriptions now, you'll want to notice that where the water flows is what makes a lot of these formation differences. Now, this kettle is a depression of detached blocks of ice. It's covered with sand and gravel that we're away from the glacier, and then as the ice melts, the material collapses, forming the depression. And that forms the kettle. And many of our lakes, Wisconsin lakes, are kettles, but this happened to be a dry one. Here we're at the western terminus at Interstate Park. And as we were walking, we saw the pothole trail. Well, we started looking, well, there's the potholes. And your potholes are formed by rocks called grinders that swirl in the meltwaters and form these and some of them are bigger than that. And then this is a view into Minnesota from the interstate. And actually, we were at a conference one time, and there are larger potholes on the Minnesota side than there are in Wisconsin. Here we're toward Anico at the Kettle Bowl segment, and this frost pocket, now that's ice land that broke away, and the lower levels of these areas are usually voided of wooded vegetation like some of our mountains. And as we were hiking in here, we saw tracks. We thought there must be lakes back in there, that there was like ice fishermen had went. We found out later that they actually run dog sled races through these valleys. Am I in wrong thing here? This is just a view of that same pocket at a different time of year. And as we were snowshoeing out that day, the orange glow on the brush was so cool. This was started off the road walk. Like I said, there are about 650 miles are completed, and some of the rest are on roads. And this was east of Stevens Point. And I said, with the road walks, it's interesting because you see the industry in some of the small towns. And as I was walking that day, I met a gal on the road. She was going from one farm to the other, and she was actually a member of this family that had this as their dairy since 1855. In 2010, we went to the Janesville Ice Age Trail Conference. They have a big state conference. And at that time, I actually felt I was helping Diane finish. If I really thought I was gonna finish it, I had probably logged about 200 miles at that time. And I said, the bunch of gals, we met this bunch of gals that were called the wannabes. They wannabe 1,000-milers. And I think 8 out of 10 of us have probably finished at this point. But I says, I had like a 200 miles logged, and then I logged 470 miles in 2010 and 430 in 2011. And this is a double staircase as part of that hike. Then the day after the conference, we went up to the state headquarters building, the Alliance building at Cross Plains. So this is their building. And the Mammoth Elephant, of course. And this is when they bought that building, they had each chapter transported a rock down into that area to be used in the landscaping. Then they engraved the Portage, the county on it, and this is me by the Portage County. Now, what we did with our hikes, quite a bit, we would try to catch if there was organized hikes going on. And some of you may know about Fragment from the university. I said, this was what was one in Hartman Creek. And I said, then what you can do is usually after you get the feel for the area, then somebody will take you maybe down the road another 5 miles, and you can walk back to your car and get in some extra miles without making extra trips. And that was hard to see, but that is the wild ginger, the lady slippers. And this is your nodding trillium. And that fall, we saw these plants with these red heart-shaped berries on here. That is the fruit from the nodding trillium in the fall. And that's what really makes the segment hiking cool, too. Yeah. Here we're at the Eau Claire Dells. Many of you have probably been to the Eau Claire Dells. If you are looking over, here's that railing that you look over the rocks. You are standing on the Ice Age Trail. The Ice Age Trail goes through that area. Yeah. And the bedrock was from this area, from Grandfather Falls, and the Eau Claire Dells are actually from an earlier glaciation. They say the bedrock in those areas are 1.8 billion years old. And this is CC Corps in 1930 built this bridge for foot traffic to go across the Eau Claire River. And that bridge is as solid today as it was then. Here we're at just south of Devil's Lake at Merrimack, and this is the only section of the trail that you don't have to hike. You take the ferry across. And this is the Gibraltar Rock. When I hiked this was a side trip. The Mobile Skills crew has now put trails up to the rock and taken like probably almost 1.5 miles of road walk off, and it's really a nice trail. Now this, I want you to notice this. Okay, this is actually a panoramic view. That is the view from, and just August, September, our Wisconsin had the sunset at the Gibraltar Rock as the head of the, and this is a little further down from that area, and we said, well, we aren't sure if we want to know exactly where we were at or not. This was a road section, and sometimes on your road miles you have a little problem deciding where you're going to put your car, but we always leave a sign on the car saying that we're doing Ice Age Trail road miles. So we had done that. As we went to get out of the car, I said to Diane, this is cow shit. I said, well, we're walking 12 miles or so. I says, you'll have to make a big step. Our feet will be clean. You'll have to make a big step into your car. And so that's what she's doing. As she did, here's this note that was back on our car. Thanks for the note, but please don't park here in the future. the freshly planted corn in this field, and with the rain, we'd appreciate not having fields turned up right with their tire tracks. P.S. We just found it over right where you're parked. Well, I knew that. And I had been raised on a farm. And I said, I would not have parked in someone's cornfield. But the new technology, they have what they called forced planting, where they plant in grass. We did not plant corn in grass fields. Near we're at Devil's Lake State Park. There's a number of trails in there, but the Ice Age Trail covers quite a bit of their trails in that park. And just views from it. And this one, we were there in the spring. I had seen these shooting stars, and I had not seen that many of them in an area ever. And so about 2 weeks later, I went back and I thought I had to finish another section, and I thought, I've got to check on those shooting stars. So I went back, and there was the spiderwort and the wild roses exactly where the shooting stars had been. Nature amazing. And this is one of our road walks also. This is at Father Marquette Park in Kewanee. And so this was our view as we did this quite a bit. If we had long hikes, especially on the road miles, then we would take off our shoes and we would take little bottles of water, a frozen one, we had them in the car, and then you would rub your feet on those bottles of water and then put on dry socks and continue. And this was our area that we had done this. And this is the area that after we done it, we had one little side road, a side trail was there, so we took that. And we got in it, started going, and all of a sudden here was a snake all the way across the 6-foot wide trail, and it wasn't even straight. And I said, I don't like snakes. And I started, Diane said, I turned around, I said, oh, and we started walking back, and Diane said, you want a picture? I said, no. And I really wished I had of later, but I didn't. And this is on your road miles too. Now, one of the fellas that's from the Alliance that done the whole trail, he says, yeah, he says, those animals, if you're out there by yourself, they always give you your moment of fame. And here's a sign, it's hard to see here. Wave to the pine trees. They always wave back. This is at the Hillbilly Hilton in the Anico area on the lumberjack segment. And this Hillbilly Hilton was actually a lumber from the Nuremberg lumber camp that was active from 1920 to 1938. At that time there was a stable and a bunkhouse, and this is all that's left is this root cellar of that establishment. And this, they've got water standing there, and there's a stove, a couple bunks, and a table. And I said, now we actually used it as a lunch break on an organized hike, but a lot of the thru hikers will stay there. Here we're at Holy Hill in Milwaukee, and I said, your Holy Hill is actually an Ice Age Trail came. And your came is a conical hill of sand and gravel that is formed by streams that flow down shafts, downward in the ice. And as that ice melts, the came is left. Now we have one in Farmington, there's one up by Marathon County has a very nice came. And now the geologists say that there was over 1,000 feet of ice over Holy Hill at one time. Just a picture. And now this was about a 4-day trip. We probably had like 45 miles that we had hiked. So it was in the fall. It was gorgeous. And when we got to Holy Hill, I said it was like by 4:30. I think in fact we had stopped for church. I was right beside there, and we still went up the 178 steps one way to the top of the steeple. If you were there, do it. But we knew when we got back that night we had a reprieve coming, because we had stayed with a fella who had an outdoor hot tub. Oops, I was supposed to find it. This is some of the views of the trail from that Holy Hill. Another one of your kettles. And here another area where we would cool our feet in the streams. And there's quite a few. That and the other thing is picnic tables too. You napped on picnic tables sometimes too. And then you would carry dry socks with you, wipe off your feet, put on the dry socks, and continue. Oh, not yet. Naps. Naps are always good. We've napped in lots of places. And in the southern part of the state, we have so many prairies, a lot of the floral prairies, but this happened to be a grass savanna. And here I was at Point Beach in Manitowoc County, and it was just the end of the year. And I said there was a cold front coming in, it was pretty cold, and I said I just walked myself on that. I did about, I think about at least 300 miles myself, which sometimes you end up going in and out if you do that. Well, I happened to stop by when I was going to start, and the fellow come out with the dog, and he says, I can take you down the road so you don't have to go both ways. So that was cool. And here was the water. I said that front was coming in. There was a white caps along the water. This is a Stewart Tunnel on the Monticello segment south of Madison. And this tunnel was named for a contractor that was killed a year before the tunnel was finished in 1887. And it's actually a train tunnel, and it's blasted through sandstone. And it is actually lightless in the center due to a curve in it. So from the gal we stayed with and information in our companion guides, we knew we had to have flashlights. Thank goodness. As we walked into that tunnel, that's what we saw. It was like being in another world. And there was ice formed from the ceiling, from the floors, and one huge ice formation from the side. Imagine where we'd been without flashlights. This was nice. I forgot that. I am an avid snowshoer. I did lots of one this year.
That's my art plate. I go outside every weekend.
I am an avid snowshoer. I average between about 75 hours a year on the snowshoes. And this is one that I went myself on this one also, and I said, here is that's a 4-foot Carsonite post, but I'm sure the trucks have blown some snow over that too, but you still knew there was snow there. And I had contacted the coordinator, because they tell you to contact them if they for any information. I said, well, do you suppose people have been on that trail? Yeah, he thought so. Well, when I got there there's my yellow blaze. There's my trail. I don't think anybody had been on the trail. And I figured I was going in almost 24 inches deep. Yeah. But it was gorgeous. Then I got to the top and I found a stump that the sun had cleared off. So I used it for my lunch table, and again to take the boots off, put the feet in the snow and dry socks and start over. Then on the way out was this, sometimes chapters have things marked. This is the actual esker is marked. And your esker is a winding, rounded ridge of sand and gravel developed by streams that flow at the base of the glacier. And this is another part of the road miles. This is takes me 3 miles from where I was born. And my twin sister, again, you see she was pretty important. And this actually is a place that a girl we graduated with owns. Yeah. And I said when we went to Cornell, we would take H and 64, had no idea that there is 25 miles of back road trails that were the Ice Age Trail that were awesome. When we started walking on that, made it really cool. This was one of our longer trips. It was about 18 miles that day, and I said we had somebody come down and we picked us up. And as we started driving up, they kept saying, you sure you want to go that far? You sure you want? I said, yeah, Rita says we're going up to Highway 8. So I said, as we started hiking, Rita wanted to know, Ruth, is it okay if we pick up cans? I said, yeah, we can pick up cans. So she had some cans. And I said, we got about 4 or 5 bags, like the size that she's got. And she says, if a car comes by, she said, I'm going to have them go down, see if they'll take these cans down the road so we don't have to come back so far. So here a truck come by. And the guy says, yeah. They said, we're going to Rosa's bar anyhow. And they said, oh, he says, I've got some cans by my house, he says. So they went back, they came back past. Here he had 2, the big black bags of cans in the back. And so they took them and set them further down the road. And as we kept hiking, I said, I was throwing them up and then I was stomping them. And I said to Rita, I said, well, maybe your thigh is used to being a hammer, as mine's not. And then I would think that, well, she's going to run out of bags pretty soon. there'd be a loose one hanging in the tree. Every day. We got back to our car, and we had not told those guys where we were parked, because that's some of the things you kind of don't do either. If you tell, meet somebody on the trail, you don't really tell them where your car is parked at. And so I never did find out for sure, but I said that was that big cold can of beer sitting there. And it was a big one. And I said, we just looked around like, are we on candid camera? Didn't see nothing, so we opened up the beer, and yes, we shared it, and yes, we recycled the can. We had cans sitting at 7 different places, and I think she got $27 for those cans that day. Here we're at Jerry's Lake segment. They're near Medford in Taylor County. Like this, some of you probably near somewhere near your area. And we had been walking along the eskers in the hills, and all of a sudden we come to this marshy area. And I said, saw these pitcher plants which I had not seen for years. So we trucked out in the marsh to get a closer picture of it. And it was well worth the mosquito dope, the netting, and the duct tape around the legs for the ticks. And then this little plastic that you see, that's what we call our sit-up-on. And that kind of protects you a little bit on if you're on the rocks and the trees and stuff like that. So it was well worth it with all that paraphernalia. And then Rita was, you had a tent at that trip, and I said, I use my Mazda camper. I use the back of my Mazda quite often for it. That fall, we got into the western part of the state, and as the gas was getting higher and we were getting further from home. And so I says, well, this trip now, Roland and Diane took their camper at Cumberland. So we stayed there, and then in the morning we'd take 2 cars out. We'd put ours on one spot, and Roland would take us to the other end. He'd putz around a little bit what he wanted to do, then he'd go back to the camper, and then we'd continue on. And this was, I just wanted to see if there's Ice Age Trail sign on this. It was Roland and Diane on the Dinger Lake on the trail. And that fall, there were so many mushroom and fungi, the large ones, like now it seems like we see so many small ones. It's supposed to have different moisture. And I said this one was just as hard as a rock, and that one was just like jelly. On the 3rd day of that trip, I said to Diane, I said, this soil seems so different here than what it had been. And so we come across this Sand Creek Bridge, and I looked into my companion guide, and this is what they call a Sand Creek Tunnel Channel. And I said, this is formed by giant rivers of meltwater that flowed beneath the glacier. So you can see where those water, everything goes someplace, and then the sand settles in the bottom. And I guess Hancock has one of these areas. And there's the sand under the bridge. And as we walked a little further on, and here we walked all the way up that sand, there's Diane at the top of the hill. And that was all sand. Here we're at Straight Lake, and closer toward the St. Clair Fall area again. And this Straight Lake is actually a few years, about 6 years back now, they opened what they call a state park, but it's a wilderness state park. And it's 2,780 acres, and it's open for foot traffic only. And I had said to the gal I was hiking with, I said, well, there'd probably be bathrooms at that park. She said, no, Ruthie, this is just pristine. And then on the description it says quiet beauty. Well, that isn't quiet beauty. And I did talk to someone just last week, and they have now opened, they've got dollies, that's like roads that you can take dollies to take your boats in, that you don't have to carry, completely. And they just, September 1st, they've opened up a few paid campsites at that Straight Lake Park. Yeah. And this is another one of your mobile skills projects. It's a circular boardwalk, and you can see that is a stump from a tree. If that tree would have fallen the other way, that would have taken out that boardwalk. And that's what these mobile skills crews end up redoing lots of times. And then we had an organized hike that next day. Diane and them had gone back, and this was in October, but I said it was a very nice day. And this is a balsam rock. It's like a volcanic rock. That's very prevalent in that area. Okay, this is at the eastern terminus at Potawatomi. I had like 12 miles left to go there, and I just couldn't get someone that wanted to go the distance and go with me. So the first time I'd done the entire trail, I called the Door County shuttle service and called a cab. And I was very nervous about doing that. And the guy picked me up and he said, oh, he says, you're safe, you're in Door County. Well, there was my cabbie. Oops. There was my cabbie. He took my picture by the rock. And this is a tower at Potawatomi and the view from the tower. And this rock, I figured this was probably, looks like it had been hand laid, that somebody had built that. And we were speaking with a geologist at one of our conferences and he said, no, he said, that is rock that has been washed smooth from the waves over the years. I walked off the trail for a purpose, which us women know happens. And I came back on the trail and I just caught the glimpse of that tree that looked like the mammoth. And I thought, what a cool thing to happen when I was out there by myself. This was the final day of of my hike. And I said, this was at Murphy Flowage in Washburn County. We were going to finish up by this place where there was a building and stuff. Well, the night before, we looked at the weather, like 20-mile-an-hour winds. It was in November, 20-mile-an-hour winds, and we had quite a bit of road mile to our face. So Mother Nature a lot of times decides which way you hike on your segment hikes. And there was a swing there. I said, you'd never pass up a swing. Never. I actually have a picture from our hiking group that we started a couple years later. I've got a picture of us on snowshoes on that swing. And this is a Hemlock Creek segment that goes out right from Murphy Flowage. It's really, any time of the year, it's gorgeous. And this was the last day of that, and I could see the car in the distance. And I says, the pine trees and the white birch was so awesome. And I must have been kind of in a daze. And Diane says, Ruth, she says, what are you thinking? And all I could say was, thank you, Lord. I could see that this was going to happen. That, I'm going to finish this, and then we'll talk about the brochures. Okay, so I finished the trail on 11/13 of 2011 on the corner of Loch Lomond and Featherstone. Does that look impressive? Was compared to the other. And I says, and Diane finished the trail in April of the following year. So we both got recognized at the Ice Age Trail Convention at the Satin for the same time. And then this is the happy dance. Yes! And then we actually started when my sister had ginseng. And we started doing that dance every step that they finished the ginseng the final year. And that's how that happened. I think we got time, or do you want to read the?
You want me to read that?
Yeah. I have a poem that Diane wrote for me the night that I finished the trail.
So, over hill, over road, over trail, over esker, over dam, over rock, through the tunnel, through the brush, through manure, round a bend, round a corner, round a tree, through snow, through rain, through sleet, by a stream, by a lake, by a pond. Never stop, ever onward, till all is complete. So, good job. Good job.
I do have some handouts here that you can take. This one is Ice Age Trail as a hike-a-thon. We've had this for 31 years. And I said this will be an Iola this year. And this is something that people can come out because you start and you go out and come back. So you can go what distance? You can go as much as 12 miles or you can go a couple if you want to. Yeah. And this is just a brochure of the Hidden Art Studio, which is also the same time, this goes on the whole weekend of the time that the hike-a-thon. And from some of these studios are just a mile or so from where, and there's all your different active studios that they do. And we have some segment maps from the Portage County Trail and Marathon County have just made up a new segment of just their trails. I have some of those brochures here. And there is one, just a brochure that they had made up, just of that Clover segment, the one that has all the boardwalk on, that they had made up. Then this is put out by the National Park Service and has lots of information about the trail and different things. Because we are actually, like we're the chapters, then the Alliance and the National Park Service is above us. we're still part of, because the Ice Age Trail is a national scenic trail. There's only 11 national scenic trails.